This year, I've become increasingly anxious because all these big social arguments about race or gender or sex or sexual orientation have crashed into work. And what's happening is that the extremes are fighting each other and the vast percentage of people in the middle don't know what to do. Conversations that ought to be happening are not happening. People are frightened to say what they want to say. Other people are just saying what they want to say irrespective of the effect of it. And the conversations we need to have with each other in order to collaborate at our best are simply not happening. And at its most extreme, what's happening is that people are either being silenced or they're being sacked. We have got a crisis of dialogue. What's happening out in the big bad world is if you have one of these arguments, you can walk away. You can leave the table in the pub. You can leave the party. You can not be friends with those people any longer. Fine. If you need to express your anger, that's great. But the thing about work is, where we spend most of our time, is that we have to have a way of exploring how each one of us are different, what we feel is different about the world, what we disagree about, and therefore find out what we agree about. And so this idea of diversity, which was supposed to be about valuing difference, has ironically become a tool of conformity. HR directors are enforcing particular rules, managers are walking on eggshells, and no one knows whether they can speak up or not, if they're offended or if they might offend somebody, both sides. And so inclusion has become this peculiar idea that in order to be inclusive, you have to think like this, speak like this, and behave like this, and if you don't, we'll exclude you. What managers need to do is to be able to create spaces that are safe for disagreement, not from disagreement, where speaking up is not courageous, or it's not sticking your head above the parapet, it's expected. It's rewarded that what you do in a meeting or a group or a team is that you value all voices, you hear all voices, because that's the way you make the best decisions. And the only way to do that is to listen to hear. Constantly try and understand the difference that other people bring and then combine it. So how do we listen to each other in order to really value the difference we bring? So take, for instance, introverts and extroverts. So it's been said that introverts think to speak and extroverts speak to think. If you're going to engage in a meaningful discussion, extroverts and introverts, you have to think about the different ways in which they need the space to contribute meaningfully. That might mean preparation before the meeting. It might mean not making a decision at the first meeting. It means taking account of the different needs that people have in order to really engage. One of the other things that people find really difficult, particularly in a social media context where everything's binary, you're for us or against us, is that people think that they've got to try and make other people agree with everything they think. Whereas actually, that's not how we work as human beings. It's certainly not how we work at work. What we have to do is find out where we can agree and where we can support a common goal, and then understand where we don't agree and accept that. So if you think of Joe Berry and Pat McGee, Joe Berry's father was killed in the Brighton bomb. Pat McGee planted the bomb and killed her father. They can't agree about a murder. But what they can do is be curious about each other so they can find a way together, which they've done, of building a charity which seeks to help people reconcile. So that's about common agreement, but accepting that they are in very different positions and they cannot agree with each other's motivations. I think there's a way of thinking about language and behaviour that helps us to resolve a lot of these difficulties. Not all language and behaviour is deliberately offensive, even if it's felt to be offensive. So I think of behaviour and language as careless, thoughtless, and malicious. So careless is when you come into a room of men and women, you say, "Hi guys." It's just a careless thing to say. Thoughtless, which is where all this ambiguity really arises, is when somebody says something and they don't understand the implication of it for somebody else. If a white person says to a black person, "Where do you come from?" the implication is they don't belong here. If a man says to a woman, "How do you manage the children and having a job? It's a question they would never ask of a man. These things have implications and baggage which people are not necessarily aware of. But when they say them, the important thing is you have to give weight to the fact that they say, genuinely, I didn't mean it. And you also have to give weight to the person who says, it upset me, I was upset and hurt by it. It always amuses me when people come back from a party and they go, oh, I went to this party and I met this person and we had so much in common. And I find myself thinking, how dull. I always want to find out what's different from me about them. What don't I know about the world that they do know about the world? That power of difference is fundamental to making relationships work. If you're in a marriage or in a partnership, you'll know the fact that you're not the same is exactly what's exciting about the relationship. So when lockdown came, what's a boy to do? I wrote a book. And I wrote it about this idea of the power of difference because I'm absolutely compelled by the idea that we do very little on our own. We do almost everything in life in collaboration with other people. And the way to collaboration is through our differences and not through our similarities. Years ago in Stonewall, when we set that organisation up, the people we talked to were the people we didn't agree with, in order to achieve a change in the law so that everybody in the country could be treated equally under the law. And other groups of people who were discriminated against understood that. So even religious people who didn't think that homosexuality was a good thing, they understood the principle of equal treatment under the law. So the whole point about the power of difference is seeing it, valuing it, and then combining it so that the power of difference becomes the drive in our ability to live together.